Are you interested in studying abroad but worried about the actual cost of how much it might be to do that? In today's video, I'm going to walk you through the basics of understanding where your expenses in study abroad are going and how you can minimize those. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Kimber. I am the study abroad specialist, and I help high school, college, and graduate students realize their study abroad dreams. And if you're returning, welcome back. I'm so excited to dive into this today with you. So we are going to be talking about the expenses of study abroad. So I know that a common question for students is always around the cost. I mean, I know that you're thinking about definitely where you want to go and why you want to do it and all of that, but it is very expensive, at least it can be. And so I know that one of the things that a lot of students think about is it expensive? How expensive? Why is it so expensive? And so we're going to dive into the basics of what you can sort of expect to find when you are applying for a study abroad program. So what we are really talking about today is the two different types of costs that are going to impact you when you study abroad. And it's really important to kind of know that there are two different ones. One of them is going to be much more fixed, which is going to be your tuition and your housing, versus your cost of living. That is different for everyone, and depending on where you're going, depending on what's going on in the global markets, that can really look a lot different as you do this. So maybe you're looking at this 5 years in the future and it looks a lot different than it would for you in the past. But you really want to think this through, because that is something that a lot of students consider when they're like, how expensive is study abroad? How much is it going to cost me? One of the mistakes that a lot of students make, and this is something that I have to work with students on when I advise them, is that they focus too much on the sticker price, meaning that they think, oh, I go to a website, I go to a brochure, and I see that the study abroad program costs, let's say, 13,000 US dollars, and that's great. Like, I feel like my parents can probably cover that. We got it. That is just the actual sticker price for the program itself. And so you have to be very clear about that, because with the actual sticker price, what they're showing you, usually more often than not, they will have an asterisk next to it, and that will tell you exactly what it includes. But a lot of times that may only include your tuition fees, which means you're just paying to be able to have a spot within that particular program. That does not necessarily always cover your housing. It does not always cover your meals. It does not always cover the travel insurance that you're going to need. So you have to be very clear about that in terms of thinking about tuition and fees. You're also going to consider the fact that you may have an application fee. A lot of schools do that now. Here in the US, we've done that for years and years for everything, that we love to make money any way that we can. But now a lot of schools in the UK, in different parts of Europe, and different parts of Asia also charge application fees to be able to apply. So you want to consider that as well. So all of that may factor into what you're seeing under tuition fees. Also, as well, you want to think about the fact that a lot of students will say, well, why is it just so expensive? I mean, for example, not to get off topic, we have this conversation all the time here in the US because our colleges and universities are so expensive. And one of the arguments that you will hear in that debate, and also in the study abroad debate, is, which is true, you have to make sure that you are factoring in enough to be able to pay people to actually teach you. So these study abroad programs, whether it is through a school, a specific university or college, or whether it is through an organized program where they are bringing in specialists, that you have to pay those people. And so there is a certain amount that they need to factor into the tuition to be able to do that. The other thing you're going to find as well is that there is often a built-in hidden experience fee. And so I can talk about that. With hidden experience fees, this is essentially a fee that, I mean, it's hidden, so they're not going to tell you it's there, but I can definitely tell you from not only studying abroad for so many years, but also now being on the other side of this, that the hidden experience fee is looking at what the program actually provides to you that is not necessarily tangible, in the sense that you don't necessarily get something that you can take back with you that's physical, but that it's something that is provided to you by just being in the program. So it may be that they have a certain amount of excursions that they take you on, or maybe they have special speaker series where they bring in people, or maybe they have something every week where they're going to be doing pizza and popcorn and a movie or something like that. So it's going to be all these experiences that help bring people together and that help sort of enrich and round out your study abroad program, but they're not necessarily stuff that you're taking home a brand new laptop or something like that. So you have to just factor that in, that when you see that tuition price, those are some of the things that are factored into that. And so that may depend on where you're going as well. A lot of times, if you're going to a really popular place, let's say like London or Paris or New York or something like that, that will also bring in a higher hidden experience fee, because there's so much that they can include with that in terms of the different things you're going to get to see and do, and that you can do as a group. And so all of that really factors into your tuition and your fees. Now, the next part of this is going to be thinking about housing. Now, I know that housing can be really stressful for study abroad students in terms of trying to figure out how that actually plays into what you're doing, because there are some programs where housing is included, but maybe your meals are not included. And then there are some programs where housing is not included. You are on your own. I can speak to this myself. As a US based student here in the US, most of the time when you come here, housing is going to be included in some way. So again, our colleges, our universities, even a lot of our high schools now are more boarding style. And so you have sort of everything included. Whereas when I went to the UK and to Italy and to a few other places where I studied, you did not have that. So housing was a separate thing. The school was not involved. You had to figure out on your own. And so that's something you're going to have to factor in, because again, if you're thinking, well, hey, it's great, like I can go and, let's say, for example, do my master's program and it's going to cost half of the cost it would in my home country. But then once you factor in the housing, it's exactly the same, because the housing is a different beast, if you will. So you definitely want to think about that. You're going to need to know that upfront. That is something that I stress to students right off the bat, is you want to figure out from the very beginning, even sometimes before you apply to the program, what does the housing look like? You need to have a conversation, if it's not clearly stated on the website or wherever you're looking, to understand what does the housing look like and what is the expectation of that. There are some programs, even let's say more short term, maybe for summer, where they're like, you're fine to find your own housing. Or there's some that were like, hey, we want you to live in our own dedicated housing. So figure out what the housing situation looks like. Now, the great thing about tuition and housing is that even if they are expensive, they're definitely fixed costs. So if a program is listed as, let's say, overall, you have the sticker price of, the 13,000 US dollars, and then maybe they have taxes, obviously. And so maybe at the end of the day, it's going to be 15,000 US dollars. That's a fixed price. Now, every year they may go up on that, but it's not going to change by the time you get to the end of your application. So you know that, okay, this is going to be the fixed price for that. And then maybe for your housing, you have to pay an additional 10,000 US dollars. But you can figure out, based on where you're going to be living, you'll know like how much that is and how much their fees are. So that's great in terms of trying to decide, okay, like how much do I actually have? How much can I spend? So I know that a lot of students stress about this particular part of going through and planning. And so I have a free budget template for you that's going to be great for you to just start to begin thinking about what a budget of study abroad might look like. So you can go in there and plug in your daily, monthly, weekly expenses, sort of think about where you might want to allocate money and what that might look like, and even figure out where your sources of money are coming from. So it's really great. A lot of students love going in there, and even if they're just at the beginning part of their journey, you can just plug it in and sort of get an idea. So definitely check that out. It's absolutely free and it's linked below. But with this particular part of the equation, now that you know your fixed pricing, you're like, okay, like things are great. Like I've factored in that I've got the 15,000 USD. I'm just using American dollars as an example, but whatever the currency is, the 15,000, and then I've got the 10,000. And so great, 25,000, like I'm all set. No, no, no. So you have your tuition and your housing figured out. You kind of know what that fee is. That's more set. But you have to also contrast that against living expenses. Now, living expenses are going to look different for every single person. Everyone is different. Everyone is not going shopping every weekend like this person here when I was studying abroad. And so you want to think about what your expenses are going to be. That's going to be a great way to do it within that budget tracker. But one of the things that you're going to need to do is to factor in just kind of what is going on in the country that you're going to. So this may be that the country you're going to is in the middle of political upheaval. It could be that they're in the middle of a recession. It could be that they're in the middle of economic downturn completely and everything is just collapsed. I don't know where you're going, but that's one of the first things you want to do is you want to know specifically, you already know like what's going on in your home country, but you want to know specifically what is going on. What is the economic climate of where you're going, because that's going to dictate a lot of different things. There's sometimes where you go to a country and maybe, yeah, they're both in recession. I know that I experienced this in 2007, 2008, America and the UK at the time where I was, they were, and Italy as well, they were in, everyone was in a recession, but the UK and Italy were able to recover a lot faster. And so you definitely want to sort of understand what's going on and what you're walking into, right? The next thing that you're definitely going to want to factor in is, what does your budget look like now? Most people don't change too much when they go to a different place, but you have to factor in the fact that you are dealing with an exchange rate. So that's going to be a number one thing. And depending on what your home currency is, it may be brutal on your exchange rate of what you actually get when you go overseas. So you need to start getting familiar with that. I can link resources below to help you understand the exchange rate. And then also as well, you're going to want to sort of figure out, well, what do you like to spend money on? Maybe you are a serial shopper. Maybe you are someone who loves to travel, same. Maybe you are someone who you want to do like a lot of museums and things like that. Now you will be able to look forward to a lot of student discounts. You'll get a lot of that in most places in the world, but what do you like to do and how does that factor in? Are you going to be living with other people? Is there a way to share expenses with them? I know that for some people, they live with other people and they decide that we're going to pool our money together. We do a twice a week, we do a twice a month shopping trip to the grocery store, and everyone just has general pool, or maybe one person goes and buys everything for everybody. And so how does that actually look for you? You'll also want to figure in other living expenses. So depending on where you're going, maybe you have to pay for health insurance. Maybe you're in a country like the US, you come here and you have to suddenly, you want to get a car, you have to pay for a car or a rental car or car insurance. There's all these different things. Health insurance as well, like I said, depending on where you're going. And just keeping in mind that even if you're going to a place that has free health insurance, I talk about this all the time, that there is often a grace period of how long that takes for people from the outside to get onto that. For a lot of students who are on more short-term programs, you may not even be eligible. So you definitely want to understand that. And then in place of that, you may need to have travel insurance, which is basically going to be that if something really bad happened, that you have the travel insurance and they can be able to cart you off to wherever and be covered. But it usually comes from your home country. So definitely factor that in. You also have to think about sort of the just day-to-day things like, how much is it going to cost you to get a card every week to be on the bus or be on the tube if you're in London, or the metro if you're somewhere else, or how much is it going to cost you to get a phone plan? Are you going to have to get a different SIM card? What does that look like? So you want to factor all those things in. Those go under cost of living, and those are very wide ranging. So you definitely want to get very clear about how much you actually spend. It is something that we all have to come to terms with. So you want to get clear about that. And so in addition to that, you also want to consider, where is your money coming from? So if you are looking at the budget template, you will definitely see that in there. But you also want to consider, where is your money coming from? Are you getting money fully from your parents? Are you chipping in some money that you've saved up before you've gone? Are you getting scholarships? If you are getting scholarships, another thing to know about this is that you want to be very clear in terms of working closely with the scholarship committees and whoever's that issuing body to understand what that looks like. Now, one of the reasons you want to do that is because, particularly in two stages, so if you're someone who you're depending on housing, so you have to get different housing, or if you are someone who, and you would all be, because you will need a visa no matter where you're going. When it comes to scholarships specifically, not so much with student loans or with other types of funding, grants sometimes. With scholarships, a lot of times they have a set time of when they're released. And so unlike, let's say, a student loan where you can apply for it and then depending on where you're getting it from, if you're getting it from a private bank or even if you're getting it from your home government, they may have a certain time to release it. But again, a lot of schools and programs look at student loans a lot differently as more guaranteed money. Whereas with scholarships, since it is something that is much more of a gift, you have to be very clear about when that's going to be applied. So typically what would happen is, if you are someone who's going to be depending on scholarship, you're going to usually get some type of letter that's going to clearly say, like from the issuing body, that will clearly say that, this person won the scholarship, they are getting this scholarship, this is how much it's for, this is when it will be released. Also, as well, you'll want to make sure that on that particular document, because you'll usually have to provide that with either your housing application or your visa application, that they are specifically saying how it will be released. So Will it be released to you directly? Usually not for scholarships, it'll be going to the program or to the school. But how will that be released? Will it be through wire transfer? They usually need to have the specifics. So you'll definitely want to have that in mind. And you'll want to just factor that in into your overall cost of living. A lot of times you don't really know as much about your scholarships until you've gotten into the program, or until maybe even you're almost on your way. A lot of times scholarships come later, but you want to just factor that in. And I always like to tell students to just plan as if you don't have anything. So plan as if you didn't get the scholarship, plan as if the student loan fell through, plan as if nothing happened and you're just depending on yourself and your parents and stroke of luck. And then that way you can build in as things start actually materializing, but you're not sort of overinflating yourself and overextending yourself and thinking that, oh yeah, I'm gonna just go and get a full scholarship, and then you end up getting $500 and it doesn't work out. So definitely just factor that in as you are thinking through everything. So another thing to think about is planning for emergencies. Now, this is something that is going to be very important. I know that when you're younger, you don't really think about that. I know that I'm kind of the same. Like, you just don't really, you're not, I mean, you're not a kid, but you're like in the phrase where you're like, oh, well, like I can just call home and someone will take care of it. But I can promise you that in March of 2020, a lot of students would have wished that they, not that anyone could have forecasted what happened, but that they could have wished that they maybe would have had some emergency plans. So I always like to tell students, I talk about this when I'm talking about packing for study abroad, all these different things. You always want to have a little bit more preparation just so you're prepared. And part of that is with your finances. You want to have some, oh crap, something happened money. And I'll just say it like that, where something bad has gone wrong. And it gives you more flexibility to be able to get out of a bad situation, maybe be able to fly home early. And this is money that you're not touching. So this is just money that's in your account somewhere. You're not going out and spending it. It's just kind of gonna be there so that you have a little bit of a cushion for an emergency only. So definitely factor that in to your budget as well. And then I will also say that a great practice that I work with a lot of students on when I'm advising them. If you're interested in getting some affordable study abroad advising, definitely click the link below that's in the description next to advising, or just go to this link here. But one of the things that I have implemented with a lot of students that I advise is to start early. So what you're going to do is, you've already gotten familiar with the exchange rates, you know the economic climate of where you're going. You're going to start spending like you are already there. And this typically will happen maybe a month to 6 weeks before you go. So what you're doing is, you're basically, let's say you are going to Paris for a semester, and so you're spending like you're already a Parisian, and so you're spending the amount of money that you would spend while you're there. You're factoring in what the exchange rate would be. So maybe suddenly that daily latte or whatever you're getting is no longer factoring in because you can't afford it, but you're starting to get acclimated so that by the time you get there, it's just nothing. You're like, I got this. I've been doing this for a while. That really helps a lot of students, just based on what I've heard, be able to help them to figure that out and kind of get into that mindset. And so one of the things when it comes to budgeting that a lot of students will ask is, well, I have some money when I'm going. Can I also get a job when I'm studying abroad? And so I want you to watch this video so that you can understand more about how it actually works when you want to get a job when you study abroad, and some of the common ones that students have. I will see you over there.